Yeah.
schedule
Yeah.
according to the assignments and
Yes.
availability of
Yes.
students.
Yeah. No,
So
that's always a good idea. I found
yeah,
that very useful. Yes.
and fourth year and fifth year students have within their syllabus they have urban design and planning.
Hmm.
So that is we sort of focused more on the
Yeah.
higher years.
Yeah.
Yeah, this time.
No, bilkul. I remember this, I think we also had it around seventh or
Yes,
eighth
yes,
semester,
yeah,
right?
seven, yeah. So similar,
Yeah.
it's a similar pattern now, only that the
Similar.
subjects
Yeah.
are named differently. It's called allied
Hmm.
design now. We had it as urban
Okay.
planning in our syllabus. So this comes
Yeah.
under an aligned design subject.
Yeah. Line design.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is mostly fourth and fifth year students, you
Yeah,
imagine?
everyone else is also allowed to join, but fourth and fifth year
Yeah.
definitely need to join.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
first year rights will be there to get a hang of
Hmm.
how it happens
Yeah.
on the macro level.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
first year rights also have made compulsory. So
Yeah.
let's see how and
Mandar sir, I'll start.
Ah, yes, ma'am. Please, please.
Yeah, yeah.
Continue. Yeah.
Okay. A very good evening to everyone here, and a very good morning to Sanjeev, who has joined us at an early hour of the day from US. It gives me a great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Sanjeev Vidyarthi, the speaker for a second Insights lecture today evening. Dr. Sanjeev Vidyarthi has graduated from Sajeje College of Architecture, Mumbai in 1991. He has pursued his master's in architecture from KU Leuven, Belgium. Masters in Urban Planning and PhD in Urban and Regional Planning from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. He is presently a professor and director, Master of City Design Program at the Department of Urban Planning Policy, University of Illinois, Chicago. His work and research as an urban designer and spatial planner explores design efforts at multiple scales to make places better. Sanjeev has studied, lived, and worked in the Middle East, Western Europe, and United States while examining the case of city planning in contemporary India through a comparative lens and integrative framework. His works with progressive scholars and professional practitioners. He works with professional practitioners and progressive scholars worldwide. He has authored many books, the research papers, essays in prestigious journals, and publications internationally. His talks have inspired a wide audience of students, professionals, and academicians. He's also been a juror for design competitions and panel discussions on international platforms. Some of his many projects include the Shiksha Bhavan Jaipur, Master Plan City of Mount Abu, Alsisar Nahargarh 5-star hotel near Ranthambhore National Tiger Reserve, Rajasthan, programming and planning neighborhood facility complex, Chitrkoot scheme, Jaipur Development Authority, and many more. We feel highly privileged to have you with us today and share with our students insights of your enriched experience in the field through the topic for the day, Reading Cities as an Architect in Contemporary India. Over to you, Sanjeev. The platform is all yours. Thank you. Sanjeev, you're on mute. Sanjeev, you're on mute. You'll have to unmute yourself. Yeah,
Yes,
now we can hear you.
better. Okay. So thanks, Sutra, for the nice introduction and also for inviting me and arranging this talk. As some of you might know, Uttara and I go back to college days. We were together in our Bachelor of Architecture, as many of you studied together. And those friendships are some of the most cherished ones, right? When you guys do all your work together in the formative years of your life. So um, it's a special pleasure to be talking to uh, many of you who are colleagues with Uttara and many of you who are students. And also big thanks to other organizers who helped organize this. I think this is a great idea where you can invite people from different walks of life, and especially from professional dimensions of design work, who can, now with the advent of this fantastic technology, join you from different parts of the world. For example, we couldn't have imagined this. I'm almost 8,000 miles away, and we are able to talk almost as in person. So, I like the idea of insights. That's what this lecture series is called. So if you see on the left side, top left of the screen, it says insights. The way I think of insights is, you're looking at something from the inside of it. So you tell us, when I say, hey, what's an insight about this? Is that you tell us andar ki baat, yeah? If one was to ask me if you could translate insight in Hindi, I would say inside is andar and sight is what I see. So I tell you andar ki baat, right? That's the purpose of this talk. So I'll do two things. One is I'll try to speak in Hindi. And I like that idea because I'm so far away and I don't really get to use that language to talk, at least in professional forum. And the second is I'll focus on telling you andar ki baat as young professionals and future professionals who would be shaping urban India very soon. the format to my mind is about 40 minutes of talk. I'll show you a few slides and talk about a general concept. It's a talk at a little macro level, as Anjali and Uttara and I were talking about, so that you guys get a big picture. You are at different stages of your architecture program, but sort of you get a big picture. It's like looking from the satellite. It's 1:30,000 scale. At this moment, you guys work on 1:50, 1:100, maybe 1:200. Sometimes a site plan on 1:500. I'm going to do a talk which is, more like 1:20,000 scale. It's like looking at the regional plan of Mumbai region. Yeah. But the purpose is so that you get a bigger picture. And and that to my mind is the importance of reading cities as an architect. Why should architects worry about cities? And especially in contemporary India. Contemporary India means aaj ke Bharat mein, today's India. Why should we be worried? Why should architects be worried about cities? Architects like to do interior projects. Architects likes to do building projects. Architects like to do campus design. Architects like to do landscape. That's sort of the tradition of architecture. Education. सबसे पहले हम site की boundary लगाते हैं, right? As soon as we get a project, the first thing we do is to draw the site. And anything which is outside of the site, we don't bother, because the site is. And what I have sort of, through my research and my anecdotal experiences and observations all over India in the last decade or so, what I found is that within that side boundary, Indian architects have been able to do fantastic work. Today, the kind of buildings being produced in India and designed in India, for example, schools and hospitals and five-star hotels, site ke andar jo ban sakta hai, malls, megaplexes, we do fantastic work, global level work within that site boundary. But jaise aap site ke bahar nikalte ho, irrespective of whatever city that is, whether it's Mumbai or Delhi or Chennai or a smaller city like Jamshedpur or Jaipur, does not matter. Site se bahar nikalti, city shuru ho jata hai. And all the cacophony starts. Streets, cities ki halat is not good. Site ke andar, boundary ke andar where architects are working, things are fine. So, someone has to pay attention to that outside the site. And the way people imagine things, that urban planners or town planners, development authorities, municipal corporations would be paying attention to beyond the site boundary. Does anyone has a sense how many urban planners, how many town planners are currently available in India? Anyone? India is a very small number compared to the population of 1.3 billion. But how many planners, town planners, jisko kehte hain? Anyone has a sense? It's 5,000 planners about, for a population of 1.3 billion, right? So Haley planners. So, architects have to sort of start to begin to pay attention to just outside the site to the city, because cities have become very important now. Majority of people worldwide now live in cities. And in the times to come, the importance of cities would continue to increase. So that's why architects need to be paying attention to cities. And in order to pay attention to cities, first, how do we sort of, read the city? It's like you read the site before you start designing on it. Similar idea. How do we read the city? So that's the focus. And I want to, as I said, I'll tell you insights based on my research. So let's move further. Okay. Is the slide moving?
Yes, yes.
Excellent. So the roadmap of the talk is, I want to begin by talking a little bit about my research overview and trajectory of my research. And then I want to talk about city design and city building in contemporary India. And then we would open it for discussion and question and answer. So about 30-40 minutes for the talk. And then I'm hoping a more substantial discussion and question. So write down your questions, and then we would take them at the end of this session. So my research is it seeks to understand how Indian cities develop and why. After graduating architecture in 91, as Uttara mentioned. I worked for about 12 years in Jaipur until 2002 as a consulting architect. And it was a very, it was a good time to graduate. 91, India's economy had just opened up. There were not many architects in Jaipur and Rajasthan. Our practice flourished very well. But the question that I always had while being able to successfully design buildings is, how do cities develop like this? They develop very fast in India, and before, we can do formal development, informal development start simultaneously. All sort of political compulsions. Where does the money for urban development comes from? What is the role of state government, local government, central government? All these questions, as many architecture students and practitioners have. So, my work has been sort of to understand at the scale of cities, how Indian cities develop and why do they develop in the manner they do. And then the purpose of doing this is that how do we do better than the past efforts? We have to do better, right? That's the focus. So you critique what has happened in order to make a better plan or a better design. But then my work is sort of across scales and contexts. So I sort of look at national level policies in India. I look at ideas about plan making that are more global in nature. But also I sort of look at the regional scale, and a city that I study closely is Jaipur, both for the reasons of familiarity and the reasons of Jaipur being an interesting city with very different kinds of development, very historical core and a very contemporary recent development. So a quick overview of some of the more important ways to read cities, and especially in India. And there are many ways to read Indian cities. We can, and you guys train in architecture school in some of them. The most common among architects is morphologically, the urban form, right? Morphology is the study of urban form. So for example, Indian cities have a dense urban core, and then there is, following that is sort of suburban growth, and finally urban fringe. So we can look at the cities, or we can read the cities in form of via a study of their urban form. We can also sort of study the cities administratively. Political scientists often do this, and public policy people. For example, administratively, cities are divided into areas, so forth, right? Political. These lines do not actually exist on ground, but these are created by politicians and decision makers to administer the city, right? For law and order and governance and so it's essentially an administrative boundary. It's not in the urban form so much, but it is for the purpose of organizing the governance of different areas. Then we can also study or read the cities in terms of the time dimension, or in terms of historical development of an area. For example, colonial part of a city, the post-colonial, the modern part of the city, the post-liberalization, so if it is developed after 1990s. That's another way. I often use a temporal scale to sort of see how things have changed over time. Then we can also study cities socially. For example, cities are divided into different kinds of areas. And that's a very interesting phenomena about cities, that people of similar kinds or similar status or similar ethnicity or similar social groupings tend to agglomerate together. They tend to hang together. Mumbai is a great example of this. Certain different areas of the city. So, for example, well-to-do areas in a city, ethnic enclaves and informal settlements of all kind. Well, then a systems view. Now, this is more recent. This is more 20th century, where we sort of think of now urban cities and their larger metropolitan regions in terms of different systems that are on top of each other. So think of this as layers in AutoCAD. AutoCAD में हम layers लगाते हैं, different doors and windows, एक layer, walls, and these layers come on top of each other and then create a composite image. So systems view of cities and urban regions similar. City के अंदर एक economy की layer होती है, Think of all the economy, labor markets, different kinds of goods, commodities, and services being produced in different parts of the city, and then they travel via transportation. So transportation की एक layer होती है, infrastructure की layer होती है. Now, infrastructure could be both physically built, it could also be social infrastructure, it could also be green infrastructure. So all your estuaries and wetlands and rivers and nalas and ponds and lakes is the green infrastructure, right? So systems view. We think of, so we can read cities and urban regions via systems view. Very common, in fact, when we're trying to do comprehensive planning, as in master plans. And then a sixth way of thinking of cities is who's the client, right? Or who's the patron. Architecture में client की बड़ी importance होती है. I mean, all of you know this. Who's the client? Who's paying, right? I mean, who's got the money?